I speak to you today with feelings of profound.
The British monarchy just changed forever, and absolutely nobody saw this coming. King Charles has just made a groundbreaking bombshell decision regarding Queen Camilla's future that has completely stunned the entire nation. For nearly 200 years, one strict tradition governed the crown, but Charles just tore up the rulebook. In this video, we reveal the exact announcement straight from the palace, why this decision changes Camilla's status forever, and the secret reason the king refused to look back. Stay tuned, because the details are rocking the royal family. The Midnight Decree. The announcement claimed to be about protocol. It was a formal update regarding the future status of Queen Camilla. That is the version the press office wants you to swallow. It is the sanitized, safe story meant to keep the public calm. The reality behind the palace doors is volatile. This was not a bureaucratic tweak. It was an executive command. The king spent his entire life waiting for the power to finally hold the reins. Now that he has them, he is showing a side of himself that nobody has seen before. He is tired of the long, drawn-out compromises. He is tired of asking for permission from people who have spent years trying to diminish the woman he loves. So, he bypassed the usual rounds of secret council. He ignored the advisors who told him to wait and move fast. He is in a race against his own health. King Charles knows that his time in the spotlight is finite. Every day he waits is a day he risks his wife's future, becoming a subject for parliamentary debate. He decided that he was not going to let anyone else dictate her legacy. Instead, he will finalize her titles and her power in a way that makes her untouchable, even if he is no longer there to defend her. This was not about love in the way you see in the movies. This was a tactical strike. He assumed that by acting unilaterally, he would force the institution to fall in line. According to him, the shock would be enough to silence the critics. But he may have miscalculated. He handed his enemies a weapon they had been waiting for. Staffers were seen in the corridors at hours when they should have been sleeping. High-level advisors were reportedly seen leaving the estate before the sun came up, their faces tight and their phones clutched to their chests. This was not the controlled energy of a royal operation. It was frantic. It was the sound of a house starting to crack. The public saw a headline about a title. The insiders saw a king who was done waiting. He was building a fortress around her. And he was doing it while he still had the physical strength to hold the bricks in place. If this was just a simple love story, why would he be this aggressive? Why risk the stability of the entire monarchy for a single, preemptive strike? The answer lies in the shadows of the rooms we are not allowed to see. There is a faction within the royal family that has been working to undermine his agenda since the day he took the throne. They are the ones who leaked the document and want to see him fail. And they know something that the public does not. They know that this decision about Camilla is merely a cover for something much larger. It is a distraction, and a calculated piece of political theater meant to keep the cameras focused on his wife. Who are these hidden figures? Why are they willing to burn their own house down to stop him? We have to look back at the years before the coronation. We have to look at the moments when the king was at his most vulnerable. We are about to pull back that curtain. And what we find might just change how you see the entire future of the British monarchy. The long game. She was the woman the entire world was told to hate. For 20 years, she was the villain in a story that had already been written for us. The press had a name for her. The public had a verdict. She was the one who broke the fairy tale. But look at the reality behind the headlines. How does a woman who was once labeled the most dangerous person in Britain survive a global smear campaign and eventually walk into Westminster Abbey as a crowned queen? The answer is not a romance novel. It is a tactical, iron-willed survival story that even the palace was not prepared for. We have to go back to the 1990s to understand the depth of this hole. This was a time when the mere mention of her name in public would cause a riot of boos and hisses. Camilla was the woman who had allegedly destroyed a marriage that was sold to the world as the perfect union. Every tabloid in London printed her face with names that would have broken anyone else. They stalked her, followed her car, and waited outside her house. Most people would have walked away. They would have changed their names, moved to a different continent, and begged the world to forget they existed. She did not. Rather, she did the exact opposite. She stayed. And stood by the man who is currently at the center of the greatest scandal in modern royal history. She waited. This was the first phase of the plan. It was not a grand strategy written by expensive consultants. It was simply the power of showing up. While the press expected her to run, she stayed in the shadows. She was quiet and composed, refusing to give the cameras the drama they wanted to sell. The palace advisors were terrified of her. They told Charles that if he insisted on this path, he would lose the crown. They warned him that the public would never forgive her for the pain caused to the late Princess of Wales. Charles did not listen. He knew something the advisors did not. He knew that the public is fickle. He was aware that if he could just keep her in the room, the heat would eventually die down. It was a slow, agonizing process that took over a decade. It started with one public appearance, then another, then a charity gala where she stood slightly behind him, never speaking, pushing and always observing. She learned the rules of the house. She learned that to win, you have to be more disciplined than the people trying to destroy you. She mastered the art of the perfect smile, wave, and the perfect outfit that said nothing and everything at the same time. But the real turning point happened in 2005. That was the year they finally married. It was a civil ceremony, not a religious one, because the Church of England was still holding on to the idea that a divorced man could not marry his longtime mistress in a cathedral. The public was still cold. The polls were still showing that most of the country did not want her to ever be called queen. She took that rejection and treated it like a challenge. Camilla doubled down on her work and picked the causes that no one else wanted. She visited the hospitals, homeless shelters, and the forgotten veterans. She did the work that the senior royals found tedious or beneath them. And slowly, something strange happened. The anger turned into indifference. The indifference turned into mild curiosity. And finally, curiosity turned into a grudging respect. She did not wait for the press to change their minds, nor did she force them to change their coverage. She made it impossible to portray her as a villain when she was doing the job better than most of the people who were born into the role. But here is where you have to look closer, because while this reclamation project was happening, Charles was fighting a completely different war. He was not just trying to make the public accept her, he was trying to strengthen her power within the family. He spent those years methodically removing the obstacles that stood in her way. He sidelined the staff who were loyal to the old guard and brought in his own team. Charles created a bubble around her that made it impossible for the rest of the family to isolate her again. He was building a foundation for her. He was preparing the ground for the day he would eventually stand before the nation and demand that she be given the title she was told she would never have. The gamble worked. The day she was crowned was not just a win for a woman who fell in love with a prince. It was the final checkmate in a game that started decades ago. But it came at a massive cost. By pushing this hard, Charles created a fracture that has never truly healed. He may have won the battle for his wife, but in doing so, he sparked a fire that has been burning in the background of the royal family ever since. He thought that once the crown was on her head, the drama would end. He thought the public would finally stop looking for the scars of the past. He was wrong. There are still people inside those palace walls who remember the 1990s. There are still people who see her as a disruption to the order of things, and they have been waiting for a reason to challenge the new status quo. Why did they wait this long to strike? And what is the specific piece of ammunition they are holding over her head right now? Let's find out. The brothers at war. If you want to understand the true cost of this bombshell, you do not look at the king, you look at his sons. The silence from the palace regarding Prince William and Prince Harry is not an accident. It is a tactical decision. But here is the question that keeps the insiders awake at night. Is this sudden, unilateral decree by the king an attempt to force his sons to reconcile? Or has he finally handed them the justification to walk away forever? To understand the friction, you have to look past the tabloid headlines. You have to look at the power dynamics. Prince William has spent his entire adult life being trained to be the heir. He is the man who plays by the rules, the man who understands that the crown requires a certain kind of sacrifice. When the king makes a sudden, unilateral move like this one, it puts William in an impossible position. He cannot publicly support a move that defies the spirit of constitutional precedent without looking like he is abandoning the very institution he is meant to protect. But he cannot publicly oppose it either. To oppose his father on the matter of the Queen would be seen as a betrayal of the family unit, so he does what he has always done. He stays quiet and focuses on the work. But look at his public appearances since the news broke. The smile is tighter, the eye contact is shorter. He knows that if the king is changing the rules of the house, the inheritance he is set to receive is no longer what he was promised. Then there is the other side of the coin. Prince Harry. For years, the narrative has been that Harry is the one looking for a fight. But if you listen closely to the whispers coming out of the West Coast, the reaction to this bombshell was not anger. It was a cold, calculated vindication. Harry has been telling the world for years that the institution is broken. He has been claiming that the palace operates with a different set of rules for the people they like versus the people they want to exile. When the king decided to force this decree through without a traditional consensus, it played directly into Harry's hands. It proved his point. If the king can change the rules for his wife, why couldn't he have changed the rules for Harry when he was struggling? That is the question that is burning in the background of every private phone call. Harry is not just looking at this as a win for Camilla. He is looking at this as proof of a double standard that he has been screaming about for half a decade. The brothers are now trapped in a cycle that feels entirely out of their control. William is trying to preserve the dignity of a system that is being reshaped by his father's personal desires. Harry is looking at that same reshaping and seeing the final nail in the coffin of his royal life. This was not a decision made with the sons in mind. That is the hard truth. Charles did not sit down with his heirs and map out how this would impact their public perception or their constitutional standing. He operated in a vacuum. He treated the monarchy like a private asset rather than a public trust. And that is where the divide between the generations has become a canyon. William and Harry may disagree on almost everything. They may be thousands of miles apart physically and emotionally. But in the eyes of the public, they are still being held to the standards of the late Queen. They are expected to be the paragons of duty. When their father acts with this level of defiance, he makes their jobs infinitely harder. He has forced William to defend the indefensible. He has handed Harry the perfect ammunition to continue his critique of the crown. It is a masterful move of self-preservation for the king. But it is an absolute disaster for the future of the family. Some advisors within the inner circle have tried to suggest that this move was intended to settle the family drama once and for all. The logic was that if everyone knew where the lines were drawn, the infighting would stop. They were wrong. This did not stop the fight. It changed the battlefield. It turned a personal dispute into a constitutional crisis. It has forced the two brothers to look at their father and realize that his priority is not the preservation of the family line, rather the protection of his own personal late-life legacy. So, to answer the question of whether this forces a reconciliation, no. It does the exact opposite. It creates a new level of resentment that cannot be smoothed over with a press release or a choreographed photo op. William feels the weight of the crown shifting on his head. Harry feels the heat of the anger he has been carrying since he left. And both of them are watching their father essentially rewrite the script, while they are still trying to act in the original play. The king thinks he has solved the problem. He thinks he has put the controversy to rest. But as we look at the growing distance between the brothers and the throne, you have to ask, is he actually creating a legacy that will survive? Or is he just ensuring that when he is gone, there will be nothing left but the wreckage of the house he burned down? There is a specific reason why he chose this moment to act. There is a piece of the puzzle that the press is missing entirely. It isn't just about the brothers. It isn't even just about the queen. It is about the one thing the king has been terrified of since the day he took the oath. The constitutional ticking clock. Can a king simply rewrite the rules of the institution he is sworn to protect? Or has he just handed his critics the ammunition to end his reign? This is the question that sits at the center of the constitutional storm. When we talk about the British monarchy, we are not just talking about a family. We are talking about a machine built on centuries of precedent, law, and absolute public expectation. And right now, the king is trying to force a new gear into a system that was designed to stay exactly where it is. The law of succession is not a suggestion. It is not a preference. It is a rigid, unforgiving structure that has survived wars, revolutions, and societal collapses. It is designed to be boring and predictable. When Charles decided to bypass the traditional consultation process and issue a unilateral command regarding the status of his wife, he did not just make a move in a family feud. He violated the unwritten code of the crown. He treated the Constitution like a piece of paper that he could edit with a pen at his own desk. The danger here is not that he will lose the argument. He has started an argument that cannot be easily finished. By bringing the status of the Queen into the direct line of public debate, he has opened the door to a parliamentary discussion that the palace has fought to avoid for over a century. Think about that. Parliament has been kept at a respectful distance from the inner workings of the royal family for generations. There is a delicate balance of power. The king reigns, but he does not rule. The moment he uses his power to reshape the hierarchy of his own house, he forces the government to ask a very uncomfortable question. If the king can change this, what else can he change? The advisors who were seen fleeing the palace in the dead of night were not just upset about a press release. They were terrified of the legal precedents being set. They saw the storm clouds gathering. They knew that once you invite the public to have a say in the internal rules of the palace, you have lost the ability to control the outcome. He is essentially betting the house on a single hand of cards. He believes he is creating stability. He thinks that by enshrining her status, he is preventing future arguments. But he is working in direct opposition to the history of his own office. The monarchy survives because it is perceived as an immutable, ancient force. It is not supposed to be a reflection of current, personal desires. When you start changing the rules to suit your own life, you stop being a symbol of the nation, and you start being just another player in a political game. The moment the king enters the political game, he loses his greatest protection, his neutrality. There is a growing silent consensus among the constitutional experts in London. They are looking at this decree, and they are not seeing a solution. They are seeing a liability. The king is acting as if he is playing a game of chess, but he is actually playing with fire. Every move he makes to strengthen her power is a move that weakens the walls protecting him from the scrutiny of the state. He is providing his detractors with a roadmap for his own dismantling. If he can alter the rules for her, then the rules for everyone else are suddenly up for negotiation. The status of his children, the division of the estate, and the very nature of his own authority is all on the table now. He is not just protecting his wife's legacy. He is testing the strength of the foundation of the monarchy itself. And the terrifying reality is that he may be discovering that the foundation is not nearly as solid as he was told it was. He has taken a quiet, private, and personal desire and forced it into the public square. He has made the monarchy a subject of debate. And in the world of high-stakes power, making your institution a subject of debate is the first step toward irrelevance. He thinks he is in control and leading the way. But the reality is that he has stepped onto a path that leads away from the traditions that have kept his house standing for 1,000 years. He is burning the bridge behind him, and he seems completely unaware that there is no way to turn back. This is not a victory for the king. It is the beginning of a vulnerability that he has created entirely by himself. The mortality factor. This is the shadow that hangs over every decision made in the palace today. You cannot understand the king's sudden rush to rewrite the rules unless you understand the one thing he cannot control: time. For 70 years, he was the prince in waiting. He was the man standing on the sidelines. He spent time watching his mother define an era, waiting for his own turn to finally step into the light, and spent his entire life preparing for a job that he was only allowed to start when he was already an old man. That creates a specific kind of urgency. When you spend that long waiting, you do not have the luxury of patience. You do not have the luxury of waiting another 20 years for the public to gradually change their minds about your wife. Nor do you have the time to let the institution move at its own glacial pace. He is not just a king. He is a man who knows that his reign is a sprint, not a marathon. And that is why the decision regarding the Queen was so sudden. He looked at his calendar, health, and he realized that the timeline the palace usually works with was not going to work for him. He decided he was not going to leave her future to the whims of the next generation. He is terrified of the possibility that, when he is gone, the walls he built around her will be dismantled by his own family. Think about the psychological toll of that. He is the man who has spent his entire adult life being defined by the absence of his own agency. He lived under the shadow of the late Queen and the scrutiny of the press. He spent his life under the expectations of a country that wanted him to be everything he was not. Now, he finally has the power, and he is discovering that the power is a heavy, brittle thing. He believes that if he can just lock these changes in, he can protect her from the cold winds of history. It is a desperate, frantic attempt to ensure that she is not erased from the story the moment he passes on. But there is a flaw in this logic. By forcing the change, he is admitting that he does not trust the institution to protect her. And if the king does not trust the institution, why should the public? Every time he makes a move to secure her legacy, he effectively shouts to the world that the monarchy is fragile, He is showing everyone that the rules are not as permanent as we were told, and in doing so, he is creating the exact instability that he is so desperate to avoid. He is running a race against his own mortality. Charles sees the finish line approaching, and he is trying to rearrange the furniture before he leaves the room. He thinks that by moving fast, he can outrun the criticism. But the faster he runs, the more dust he kicks up. The advisors who have spent their lives protecting the dignity of the crown are watching him with genuine fear. They are not afraid of her. They are afraid of the panic that is driving his decision-making process. They can see that he is no longer thinking about the long-term health of the monarchy. He is thinking about his own personal peace of mind. He is sacrificing the myth of the immutable crown to save the person he loves. This is the tragic irony of his reign. The more he tries to use his power to protect her, the more he exposes the fact that the power itself is fleeting. He is trying to build a legacy in a system that is designed to change the moment the occupant of the throne is replaced. And he is playing for a lifetime of security, but he is doing it on a timeline that is measured in months and years. He thinks he is being decisive and being the leader he was always told he would be, but his urgency is being read as insecurity. His speed is seen as recklessness, and the people who have been waiting for a reason to question his judgment are finding exactly what they were looking for. He is burning his own time to buy her security, and he is leaving the wreckage for the next person in line to clean up. He believes he is in control of the clock, but the harder he fights against the ticking, the louder it gets. And the silence that follows his orders in the corridors of the palace is not the silence of obedience. It is the silence of people watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. He has set the trap for himself, and now he has to wait and see who is going to be the first one to spring it. The secret motive. Why would a king intentionally light a fire inside his own home? We have spent time talking about his health, his love for his wife, and his battles with his sons. But that is only the surface level. If you think the bombshell decision about the Queen was simply a move driven by sentiment or a sudden fear of mortality, you are missing the real play. You are watching the game, but you are not looking at the players behind the scenes. There is a faction inside the palace, an entrenched, powerful group of advisors and courtiers that has been acting as a shadow government for generations. They are the ones who were there for the late Queen. They are the ones who truly believe they are the stewards of the monarchy. They also think the king is merely a temporary occupant of a throne that belongs to the institution, and they have been waiting for him to fail. For years, these figures have been quietly whispering against his agenda. They have been leaking bits of information to the press and blocking his modernizing efforts, citing tradition as a shield to protect their own relevance. They were the ones who told him that his wife could never be queen. They were the ones who told him that his vision for a leaner, faster, more relevant monarchy would never work. The king knows exactly who they are, and he knows exactly what they have been doing. His recent unilateral decision was not a mistake. It was a declaration of war. By bypassing the traditional consultation process and forcing this issue through, he effectively did something that nobody expected. He stripped them of their power. He signaled to the entire establishment that the era of the shadow government is over. He took the one topic they held over his head before they could use it against him. He is not just protecting her legacy. He is purging the house of the people who have been holding his throne hostage since he took the oath. Think about the sheer audacity of this move. He took a decision that he knew would be controversial, and he used it to force a showdown. He wanted to see who would stand up and oppose him. He wanted to see who would run to the press and try to undermine him. And by acting as fast as he did, he forced their hand. The advisors who were seen fleeing the palace in the middle of the night, they were not just shocked by the news. They were the ones who realized they had just been outmaneuvered. They were the ones who realized their influence had just evaporated. This is why he looks so unbothered by the external criticism. He knows the media noise is just that, noise. He is focused on the internal architecture of the palace. He is dismantling the old, rigid power structures that have been suffocating his reign. But this brings us to the most dangerous part of his plan. He is creating a vacuum. By pushing these people out and alienating the old guard who have been the backbone of the institution for 70 years, he is leaving himself incredibly exposed. He thinks he can replace them with his own team, people who are loyal to him and his vision. But history tells us that when you remove the people who have been holding the gears together for decades, the machine tends to break. He is betting everything on the idea that he can build a new court from the ground up, a court that serves him rather than the ghosts of his mother's reign. He thinks he is being a visionary. He thinks he is being the leader who finally broke the cycle of tradition that has held the crown back for so long. But his enemies are not gone. They are just regrouping. They are watching him from the sidelines and counting the months. They are waiting for him to make the one mistake that will give them the leverage they need to pull the rug out from under him. They know that he is tired and rushing, and they are banking on the fact that, in his haste to secure his wife's future, he is leaving his own flank wide open. He is not just fighting for his wife. He is fighting for control of the very definition of the monarchy. Charles wants a crown that reflects his own values, interests, and life. The old guard wants a crown that reflects the unchanging, immortal myth of the past. These two visions cannot coexist. The bombshell decision was the first strike, but it is not the final one. He has forced the war into the open, and now he has to win it before the clock runs out on him. The question is, does he have the support he needs to survive the counterattack, or has he just handed the keys of the castle to the very people who want to see him fail? The unwritten future. So, where does this leave us? The dust has settled on the initial announcement. The headlines have changed. The social media noise has shifted to the next big crisis. But inside the walls of the palace, the atmosphere has fundamentally changed. We started this journey looking at a single decision regarding the status of the queen. We thought it was just a matter of titles, and about a king finally stepping up to protect his wife. We were looking at the wrong map. What we have uncovered is a story of a king who is not just fighting for his legacy, but fighting for the very right to define what the crown actually represents. He has taken the most sacred traditions of his house and used them as kindling for a fire that he hopes will burn away the rot of the old system. But here is the final, uncomfortable truth. You cannot burn down your own house to get rid of the pests and expect the structure to remain sound. The king has successfully cleared out the old guard. He has silenced the internal dissenters who kept his mother's reign so incredibly stable for over 7 decades. He has forced the heirs to witness a reality where their father is the primary architect of his own rules. He is essentially testing the structural integrity of the monarchy in real time. And as we watch, the world is waiting for the one thing he cannot control: the reaction of the public. He believes that by being decisive and being the man who finally breaks the cycle, he will be remembered as a bold, modernizing force. But history is a cruel judge. If he is right, he will be the king who saved the monarchy from its own stagnation. He will be the one who finally adapted the crown to fit the life of a modern man. If he is wrong, he will be the king who accelerated its decline. The silence from the brothers, William and Harry, is not just a strategic choice. It is a warning. It is the sound of a family that has realized the table they were all sitting at has been moved, and they are not sure if they are still invited to the meal. He has gambled on his own authority. He has wagered that the public's desire for a human, relatable leader outweighs their need for a distant, immutable symbol of the past. But does he have the support to survive the counterattack? The old guard is not just gone. They are waiting. They have seen his hand. They know exactly how he operates and exactly where he is most vulnerable. He has exposed his flank. The question is no longer about the queen. It is not even about the king. It is about the future of the institution itself. Can the monarchy survive a leader who treats it like a personal project? Or have we just watched the beginning of the end of 1,000 years of tradition? The king thinks he is in control of the clock, but the silence in the corridors, the lack of support from his own heirs, and the growing scrutiny of the state suggest that the clock is not his to command. He has pushed all his chips to the center of the table, and now he has to wait to see if anyone is going to call his bluff. We want to know what you think. Was this a visionary move by a leader who finally took control? Or has King Charles made the biggest mistake in the history of the modern British crown? Is he protecting his wife, or has he just burned the bridge that kept his house standing? Drop a comment below and let us know your take. Are you on the side of the king, or do you think he has gone too far? Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the moment the next move in this royal game is made, we will be the first to break it down. The game is not over. The board is still set. And the next move will be the one that defines the end of this reign. Thank you for watching.